Welcome back to another grammar lesson for IELTS General Writing, where we're going to deep dive into punctuation. Punctuation, not often taught, maybe as often as it should be. Punctuation is super important, and in this lesson we'll learn lots about how we can use punctuation accurately. So, let's jump in. Why does punctuation matter? Here's a funny example. Some of you may have heard it before. Let's eat, Grandma. Grandma is going to be worried in this written example because she thinks we're going to slice her up and boil her and eat her or something quite horrible. Punctuation saves lives. Let's eat, Grandma. So here we can see the young boy is speaking. He says, let's eat. He's inviting his grandma to eat. He's not wanting to eat his grandma. The young boy is not a cannibal. So there you can see an example, just a funny example of why punctuation is super important within our writing. In this lesson, we're going to look at 4 major types of punctuation. So we're covering the most commonly used types of punctuation, making sure you understand them. And that is commas, capital letters, apostrophes, and brackets. So these are really 4 important parts of punctuation that we use a lot, especially those first 3, commas, capital letters, apostrophes. Brackets, I recommend you use them once in Task 1 and Task 2. Try and use them, and of course you need to use them accurately. I've not gone over full stops. I think that that's maybe a little bit too basic. Commas and capital letters, apostrophes, super important, brackets as well. So let's begin with commas. And they are often considered one of the trickiest parts of grammar. They're also one of the most commonly used types of punctuation within English language and English writing. I see students misuse commas all the time, and often they're either in the wrong place or used too often. So they're just thrown all over, kind of almost in a hopeful way, kind of just throwing them in at any point during a sentence, just in case maybe it needed one. If you use them incorrectly, too much, you'll lose marks. So you must use them accurately. Now, there are 4 main reasons that we can use commas. There's actually a few more, but we'll focus on just 4. Separating items in a list. Separating dependent and independent clauses. We looked at that in the previous lesson. After introductory phrases. And also for embedded clause, an embedded clause. We'll talk about that in a bit more depth, but it's another type of complex structure and sentence that we can use. Okay, so let's take a look at separating items in a list. So the comma organizes lists using commas, and that's to separate nouns and to add clarity so that we know if we don't have any commas in the list, it might just be like a really strange, weird, long one like name of thing, but the commas show us exactly what nouns we're talking about. And here's a formal example. Please address the following concerns: toilets, car park maintenance, and common fee areas. Okay, so I just also highlighted here a semicolon. So when we use a sentence like this, if we're beginning a list, and the list will end the sentence, we can see here, toilets, car park maintenance, and common fee areas, full stop. If the list ends the sentence, we can use a semicolon to begin the list. Now, this is another kind of structure that you can use. Of course, you've got to use it accurately. But a semicolon, you could definitely use within your writing too. So that's another type of punctuation. But we're focusing on the commas here. And there's one very important common. Toilets, comma, car park maintenance, and common fee areas. Some people will add an extra comma between maintenance and common fee. I don't. That's a different kind of comma style that I don't teach or use myself. So this is what we do. Toilets, comma, car park maintenance, and common fee areas. Of course, common fee area fees. So here there are actually 3 nouns: toilets, car park maintenance, and common fee area fees. The last 2 nouns, so the second to last and the final noun, we use an and between, no comma there. Here's an example of an informal sentence. Our weekend plans include hiking, picnicking, and enjoying the sunset, if we can manage the early start. And you'll see there's an exclamation mark used in here as well. You can possibly use an exclamation mark within your informal writing, although I don't think you'd use them with informal. Okay, I'll not go too much further into that, but you can see how commas are very important to separate nouns in lists. Okay, next up, separating dependent and independent clauses. We do this within complex sentences, as we've seen previously. Let's take another look at some examples. While the data suggests improvement, further analysis is needed to draw definitive conclusions. I'll ask you now, so there's 2 clauses here, first and last. Where is the dependent clause? Is it at the first part of the sentence or the second part? Well, you might have got it right. It's the first part of the sentence is dependent, while data suggests, and the second part is our independent clause. Of course, you can see the comma separating them. Here's an informal example. Although it's raining cats and dogs out there, dependent again, we'll definitely have a great time down at the beach. Wow, that sounds quite optimistic. Okay, I'll not go much further into this. We've talked about this previously, but it's super important to make sure when you're using a complex sentence, which I do suggest you do in your writing, use that comma in the correct place. Next up, we have our third usage type, and that's after introductory phrases. So use a comma after sentence openers, and that's really the important phrase here, sentence openers. We use them a lot in informal writing, sometimes informal, but definitely a lot in task 2 as well. And sentence openers, it's kind of like a dependent clause in a way. After some consideration, comma, I propose a revised strategy for our project that might involve a few extra morning meetings. After some consideration. I mean, this is just an example of dependent and independent. This is really a complex sentence. But sometimes I talk about the use of sentence openers, or these introductory phrases, and they're pretty much the same as a dependent clause, and it can be things like, in my opinion, I do believe that. So these are also opinion openers, very similar to sentence openers. They also need a comma. Here's an informal example. To be honest, I'm really looking forward to a cozy evening with friends and maybe a bottle of wine too. There are actually 2 commas here, and I always use, if I'm adding to on the end of my sentence, which is an informal use of to, T-O-O, not the number, you should use a comma before to. That's something that I always do in my writing. It's more of a style kind of part of my writing. You could also do that too. And of course, our introductory phrase is an opinion opener, to be honest, comma. So really important that you use them after these sentence openers. And finally, onto the embedded clause. So these types of sentences, they add extra detail within a sentence and they use the 5 W's. That probably doesn't give you much indication of what they are, but I'll have a run through with you now and show you what an embedded clause is. It's a different type of sentence that you can also use. So it's similar, in a way, sentence types such as simple, compound, complex. You can also have an embedded clause, and they need commas. Okay, let's see an example that will help you. The comprehensive report, comma, which was meticulously prepared by our research team, comma, impressed the committee. So it almost acts like brackets. Embedded clauses always start, you can see which here, so they always use the 5 W's to kick them off. We can remember the 5 or even 6 W's with a Rudyard Kipling poem that I'll try and remember now. I keep 6 honest serving men, they taught me all I knew. Their names are what and where and when and how and why and who. Probably got those in the wrong order, but what, where, why, when, who, and I forgot one, how. There you go. That's the 5 or 6 W's, depending if you include how. And these start that clause in the middle of the sentence. They're sometimes called hamburger or sandwich sentences because we have an independent clause separated with commas on both sides and this clause in the middle starting with a 5W. Let's just read the start and end clauses. So the comprehensive report to the end, impress the committee. That's an independent clause which is actually split in the middle with a comma either side. So comma which, and then we have our embedded clause. The embedded clause is which was meticulously prepared by our research team, comma, and then ends the sentence with the final part of the embedded clause. The independent clause. So there you go. An embedded clause is a clause in the middle of an independent clause separated by commas starting with W's. Let's see another example. My friend, who is a fantastic cook, will be hosting the dinner party at her place with her husband. Let's read through that sentence, but skip the embedded clause. So we'll just read the independent clause of the sentence. My friend will be hosting the dinner party at her place with her husband. We spliced it in the middle, we sliced it, and we've got a comma, who is a fantastic cook, comma, will be hosting, and then we continue. So embedded clauses can be used. Probably I would only suggest using them one time if you want to use one in your writing, but you can use them for most tasks. Now, if you were to use them more than once, it might be a bit weird because although they are super useful, we should try and find that balance. So always good not to overuse structures and punctuation and repeat vocabulary. We want a range of language and a nice balance of fluency to be shown. Okay, so that's 4 really important uses of commas. Now let's move on to capital letters. Capital letters indicate proper nouns and sentence beginnings, and they play a very important role in written communication. Now, capital letters, it's kind of more of a basic part of punctuation, but they're super important, and I still see students make a lot of mistakes. Now, students often overcapitalize random letters, which will lose you mark. If you're using them incorrectly and too much in the wrong places, you're going to lose marks. You must be accurate with them. That's the main thing. You've got to be accurate with capitalization. So, capitalizing names, proper nouns. So like people, places, and things. John Smith, classic example. London, what a nice city. United Nations, an important global corporation of sorts. So people, places, and things. Capitalizing the first word. I see students actually make mistakes with this more often than you might think. So here we have the, start of the sentence, capital T. The weather is beautiful today. A third use of capital letters, capitalizing the first person pronoun I. I believe that, so you always need to capitalize I. Again, you'd be surprised. I see a lot of students not doing that, and that's just a really simple mistake that will lose you quite a lot of marks. Titles and headings, the impact of climate change on cities. So we can see here all the important words. The is at the start, so that needs a T. But all the important words are capitalized. Now, prepositions like on, of, an, these kinds of articles, they're not capitalized. So we only capitalize the important words within titles and headings. These smaller words we don't capitalize, but the is the start of this title, so we do capitalize that. Okay, a run through of capitalization. The important thing to remember is to be accurate when capitalizing within your writing. Okay, let's see if you can spot the mistakes. First up, I visited Paris last summer. It was an amazing experience. What mistakes can you see here in terms of capitalization? Here is the mistakes. There's 3 capital letters that were missed. I, always capitalise. Paris is a proper noun, so obviously a capital city, a place. And they didn't capitalise the start of the second sentence either. Here is another example. See if you can spot the mistakes. My favourite author is J.K. Rowling. She wrote the Harry Potter series. Quite a lot of punctuation mistakes here. Let's take a look at the answers. My favourite author is J.K. Rowling. She wrote the Harry Potter series. There's quite a lot of proper nouns in here, and of course, our sentence beginning, the first letter in the sentence needs capitalisation too. Okay, let's move on from capital letters and take a look at the apostrophe. Apostrophes are used to indicate possession and form contractions in written English. Contractions are less commonly used within formal letters, but we do use contractions a lot within informal letters. So let's take a look at this now. Indicating possession. Students make mistakes on this all the time, and it's something that you must remember to do. I appreciate your help with my friend's visa application. So this person, it's they possess the visa application. We're showing possession with friends. And we must put the apostrophe between friend and S. Friend's visa application. Please check the details of the company's proposal. Okay, indicating possession, apostrophes, super important. Let's take a look at contractions. Again, students make mistakes with this, so do be careful. Let's plan a get-together this weekend. I am, contraction, I'm excited about your upcoming visit. Okay, so just an important note on apostrophes. You must use them accurately, and they're really important for indicating possession and also contractions. Let's move on to our final punctuation focus, which is brackets. So brackets are used to add extra details, sometimes to give more information and clarify details as well. But it's very important to use them accurately or not too often. So don't overuse them. So much like when students learn punctuation, they sometimes just use it all the time. I suggest don't use brackets more than once within your writing. Let's take a look. So formal IELTS general letter examples. I'm writing to address the issue of delayed document processing, required for most forms and fees, to ensure a new method of procedure. Kindly consider the proposal for enhanced security measures, including surveillance cameras and access control systems, to fortify the safety of our premises. Here you can see we're adding extra detail with brackets. I do suggest you try and use them once in your writing because it indicates extra, more advanced fluency to the examiner, but you must use them accurately. Let's take a look at informal example. Hello, Kevin. I just wanted to say, in case you didn't know already, that your new painting is absolutely fantastic. Well done on creating such a beautiful masterpiece. Here I've just got this kind of extra phrase and I'm just adding a bit more detail to my language. And the last example, that's fantastic news and I'm looking forward to celebrating with you soon. Let's catch up over coffee, or tea if you prefer, next week. That's a great example of using brackets just to add extra detail. Okay, so that brings us to the end of brackets. Just a note on using them accurately. Again, I would suggest trying to use them once and only once within your task 1 and task 2 piece of writing. Don't force it, use them naturally, and of course, as with all punctuation, accuracy is key. So if you have any questions on any of the learning points in this lesson, of course, please jump in the Q&A and I'll get right back to you. But let's jump into our next lesson now.